It's common for it to hurt, but that doesn't mean that it's normal for it to hurt. Can you imagine how we would have survived as a species if it was supposed to hurt to feed our young?
Right.
We wouldn't have gotten very far.
Mhm.
So some tenderness in the beginning is normal, but pinching, cracked nipples, curling your toes every time you put a baby on, that is not normal. Breastfeeding is not a hazing event that you have to go through to prove that you're like a real mom or anything.
Mhm.
So if you're having pain when you're feeding your baby, just get help right away.
You're listening to episode 105 of the Mom Talks with Christa podcast. Hey guys, thanks for joining me this week. I have another excellent episode for you today. I'm so excited to share with you. Later on the episode, I have Shelly Taft, who is an IBCLC, talking all about breastfeeding misconceptions. And let me tell you, there are a lot. So we're going to cover all the bases there. And this interview was done a while ago. So at that time, we were talking about the formula shortage at that time, what the state of it was, where you could get resources, and so much more. It's such an important topic. So let's just kind of dive in. I do have a little intro here, but I'm kind of all over the place. There's so much I want to talk about, but don't worry, guys. I won't bore you with too much. So it's officially November. I know I say this every month, but time flies, right? So I always record these a week ahead of time. So like my timing is always kind of off. I'm like, wait, it's November. It's November by the time this comes out. But I am just on cloud nine today as I'm recording because I'm officially 20 weeks pregnant today, halfway through our pregnancy. And we had our 20-week anatomy scan today, just this morning. And it was just honestly the coolest thing. All my friends had told me this would be just such a cool and amazing appointment because you get to see everything, right? And it did not disappoint. And for those of you that don't know, I haven't told you yet, we're not finding out the sex of the baby. So it's even a bigger surprise at the end that we are just looking forward to. And playing into every kind of like symptom or look, feel, all that. I'm like, whether it's a boy or a girl. So super excited about that. So I can't stop smiling. This is just what you're gonna get this week. And it's probably just more to come. I want to share this with you guys just to kind of put different perspective and all that. But I really truly feel grateful in this pregnancy and in my body in this pregnancy. And I want to encourage you guys. I know it's not the same for everyone. I know we all go through our different struggles, whether, before pregnancy, postpartum, during pregnancy, with our bodies, we struggle in different ways. But if you can just find some time each day to feel truly present in your body and feel grateful for what it has given you. So we don't have to get to specifics. So maybe you are having a hard time accepting certain changes or certain things going on in your body. But if you can just acknowledge what your body has done for you, and that's going to look different for everybody. But if you do struggle with this, just remember it takes time. Start slow. And even if it's just in the morning, you're going to look in the mirror and just say, I'm grateful that I can get from point A to point B. Or I'm grateful that my body was able to give my baby life, or whatever it looks like for you. Remember, it's different for everybody. But I've struggled with my own love for my body over the years. But this pregnancy has brought a whole new love that I didn't know I had, just because it's like, I'm like protecting this baby inside me, and I could get emotional talking about it. So I'm going to cut it before it gets too emotional, but it's just, this is the coolest thing. And I just feel so grateful and appreciative for what my body is doing. So if you can even find just a glimpse of gratitude for your body or for what it's able to do, just try to find it and find that appreciation, whatever that looks like for you. Okay, enough with like the sappy stuff, but we are officially in holiday season. I kind of feel like once Halloween hits, once this comes out, Halloween has passed. Once Halloween hits, the holidays are here. We are in mode for Thanksgiving, Christmas, Hanukkah, New Year's, whatever you celebrate, however you celebrate, it's all coming, right? It's all here. And so keeping in mind what we were just talking about being present. I really want to be present as much as I can and soak it all in. And I encourage you guys to do the same. Obviously, like, this is the last holiday season. That's just me and my husband. And so there's a lot that comes with that. But next year, I'm like looking forward to next year as well. And I find in pregnancy, I keep looking forward to the next stage, but being present in each stage and allowing myself to be grateful in each stage. So if you are in a tough spot right now, or if you are in a spot where you're looking forward to something constantly, take a minute, soak it in, and really be present in this holiday season, because it can come and go so quickly. So I just encourage you to soak it in and lean into those nostalgia feelings, or those feelings that really tie you to maybe your partner, to your family, whatever it is, whatever it looks like for you. And yeah, I'm just feeling all warm and fuzzy today. Okay. And this is an important thing I always like to talk about around the holidays. Just remember that you cannot please everyone. You can't do it ever, and especially not during the holidays. And once you have families of your own, you find it's hard to make things work the same ways. I had friends of mine that would tell me they have like 6 different Christmases to go to. And I'm like, I can't even wrap my head around one Christmas sometimes. So that's a lot. And so if you feel like you have a million places to go, or tons of gifts to buy, or you feel like you're going to let someone down if you say no, or if you say, I don't think I can do it this year, stop and take a breath. Ask yourself, what makes sense for me and my family this year? And what's possible? Because sometimes we set ourselves up and we say yes to all these things, but it's actually not possible. And if it is maybe possible, in the meantime, we are going to be stretching our minds and our heads and all that so thin that by the time it's over, we're just like, oh my gosh, thank God it's over. And we didn't even enjoy the holiday season because we were working so hard at pleasing everybody around us. So I just want to stress that so much. Start now, not to give yourself anxiety now, but start thinking now so you can get yourself in the right mindset. Because when it comes up, especially as people pleasers, when it comes up, it's a lot of times we're just like, yeah, well, I'll make it work. Yeah, that's fine. I got that. And we say yes before actually like going back to our calendar, talking to our partner, looking at what goes on for our family. And we're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to make this all work? So I encourage you, if someone asks you, what time will you be at this thing? Or can you come to this thing? Say, let me get back to you. Let me check my calendar. Let me check with my fill in the name, partner, whatever, husband, wife, spouse. Let me get back to you. Because that doesn't mean you're going to say no. That doesn't mean you can't do it. That's just saying, like, let me gather all my thoughts. Because as a recovering people pleaser, as I like to say it, I used to just say yes on the spot, or yeah, I'll figure it out. So then in my mind, I'm like, oh my gosh, I already told them yes. I get back to my, my calendar or my phone, and I'm like, how am I going to make that work? And then instead of just being upfront and honest with the person and saying, you know what, I just don't know if it's going to work, I stress myself out. And I don't want that to happen for you. So start thinking now about what potentially might come on your calendar, come on your plate. What are things from last year that you don't want to repeat this year? And just really think about what makes sense for your family, because you can't do it all. You can't please everybody. You can't drive all over the world in one day. So ask yourself, what makes sense for me right now? And we'll kind of go with that. All right. I want to get off my soapbox. I just really encourage you guys to really start thinking about that and what makes sense for your family, and just send you guys some little encouragement today. Okay. Real quick, some important notes before today's interview. Today is our monthly Facebook room at 11 a.m. Central. We typically do these the first Wednesday of every month. And being the month of Thanksgiving, I thought that we could center it around gratitude and how having gratitude can rewire your brain. And so this will be a fun one. I'm not going to get too into it now. It's not going to be like your typical gratitude exercise, but I just thought it was so important around this month, how we can kind of rewire our brain and look at gratitude a little differently. Then for peanut pods, this is again on the Peanut app. If you ever have any more questions on how to do that, you can check in on our show notes. You can email us and we will assist you there. So we have our bi-weekly peanut pod. It's the first and third Thursday of every month. We have one this Thursday. That is the 3rd of November. And it's all about dealing with difficult relationships during pregnancy and motherhood. And this, while it does not directly tie to the holidays, I think a lot can come out during the holidays, especially if you don't see certain family members a lot. Maybe you have to deal with them during the holidays, or maybe you travel and you see family that you don't see a lot. So figuring out schedules, how it's going to work, with other family members that you might not normally live with. So we're going to talk about some tips, share and discuss there. And then the next pod will be November 17th, another Thursday. And this one's all about holiday anxiety. We talked about this last year and it was a big hit because a lot of us do have anxiety around the holidays. Buying gifts can be stressful and costly. It can be a lot of time consuming. People want you to meet them at different places, make food dishes you've never made before. So there's a lot. So we're going to discuss some different ways of dealing with this, helping, and so much more. So you will not want to miss this. Okay, my intro has been long enough. I am sorry, but I hope you found some encouragement in it. Today's interview, we have Shelly Taft, who is a lactation consultant. She's also a doula, and she's talking about the top breastfeeding misconceptions, like I kind of talked about earlier. She is so knowledgeable and covers all the bases when it comes to breastfeeding. So if you are currently breastfeeding, plan to breastfeed, want to learn more, or want to share with a friend, this is a great episode for you. I just find her content so helpful. That's why I reached out to her, have her on the show. So I cannot wait to share this with you guys. Also, as I mentioned, I think we interviewed a few months back. So we talk about the current state of the formula shortage, and she shares some resources, which whether you are formula feeding or not, it's important resources to have. You can share with friends or neighbors, whoever needs it. Yeah, it's really great. All right, guys, enjoy this interview and meet me at the end for our Mom Tales of the week. All right, guys, today on the show, I have Shelly Taft, who is a board certified lactation consultant, and we are talking all about breastfeeding misconceptions. I think this is such an important topic because especially with internet days that we're living in, anything can be published. So it's hard to know, especially when you're in a group or you're scrolling on Facebook, you're on whatever website, it's hard to know what's true and what's not. And so we cover a lot of those big misconceptions that are seen. Also, she reassures and reiterates that what works for one mom might not be your journey. So it's important to not compare yourself and to just understand that everyone's journey is going to be different. But we just have a really great interview. So without further ado, here's my interview with Shelly Taft. Enjoy. Just before we get started, can you just tell us a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure. My name's Shelly. I live outside of Boston in Massachusetts with my husband and kids. And I'm an international board certified lactation consultant, a doula, a nurse, and a family educator. I run a private practice where I help moms with feeding their babies. I'm also an infant sleep coach, so I do sleep consults as well. And I run an online mom community, parenting community called the Baby Pro Bistro, where expecting and new parents can get workshops and classes on anything related to pregnancy in the first year of their baby's life.
Amazing. And so how did you kind of get into the world of breastfeeding? Like what made you kind of go that angle? Was that always your plan, or did you kind of pivot here and there?
Definitely pivoted. I don't know any child growing up that's like, I want to be a lactation consultant. Right. So I actually majored in politics out of all things in college. Wow. But I started off as a doula. When I had my first baby, I really, really struggled postpartum. And that's when I started to realize that there wasn't that many resources out there. So I started out as a doula. I loved being a doula, but it was really hard being on call with little kids and having to drop everything and go at the drop of a hat. So I kind of sidestepped into lactation and have been doing that ever since, along with the other projects. I kind of like to collect credentials, as my husband likes to say. So I've been doing this since about 2006, working in the the birth and pregnancy world, and I love it. I wouldn't change a thing.
That's amazing. Yeah, definitely. I feel like this is one of those areas where women can use so much support because, you kind of grow up thinking like, oh, it's not going to be a big deal. Like it'll be easy. Just put them on the breast. And then, there's so many different things that can come up. And so I think that support is so needed for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
And so I kind of want to start with, we've kind of covered this before here and there, but we see questions all the time about milk coming in, like how the different stages of it and like when it should come in, or, probably shouldn't even say should because it's different for everyone, how it comes in. So just in general, when can women expect to see their milk come in, and, at what kind of stage should they, consult with a lactation consultant if it's not coming in how they kind of foresaw it?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think when most people think of breastfeeding, we think of this white, flowing, abundant milk, but that doesn't happen at first. When the baby's first born, you have colostrum, which is the first milk. And colostrum is very small amounts. You don't feel full. You won't see colostrum leaking out. For most people, they don't. But it's very concentrated. There's like 7 million living cells in 2/3 of a teaspoon of colostrum. So this is what your baby's first vaccine is, essentially. And it's kind of like the training wheels, because your baby's been just swallowing amniotic fluid this whole time. So the colostrum is like thick and sticky. It teaches them how to swallow, and they don't need a lot. Then around like 3 to 5 days, that's when your second milk starts to come in, as people like to say, like my milk came in. And that's when you'll start to see the colostrum transition over from that golden yellow or clear to that more whitish color. It will be less sticky. Your breast will feel more full. You'll see more leaking out. You'll hear more swallows when the baby's on the breast. And that's what we're looking for about day 3 to 5. There are some things that can delay your milk from coming in or keep it from coming in completely. And we do definitely want to explore those things, like a C-section. In not all cases, but in many cases, if you have a C-section, your milk supply might be a little bit delayed. So maybe instead of coming in at day 3, it comes in at day 5 instead. If you get a lot of IV fluids during your labor and delivery, that can delay your milk production. If you had a long labor, a long induction, if you were really stressed, if you lost a lot of blood. So there's a number of things that can prevent your milk from coming in. And they definitely need to be looked at. So if you don't feel like your milk has come in by day 5, especially if your baby is losing more than 10% of their birth weight, then that is definitely the time to reach out for help. Because even something like retained placenta will keep your milk from coming in. And sometimes that's the only way that we catch that, where I'll work with a parent and they're like, my milk's not coming in. It's day like 7, day 8. And I send them out to make sure that there's not a retained placenta. And that's when they find it. And if that's not found, like that can cause a lot of trouble for the parent. So if you feel like your milk's not coming in after day 5, I wouldn't hesitate to reach out for help, because not only to help bring your milk in, but to kind of figure out if there's something else going on that's related to that can cause other problems for the parent as well.
Okay. And so for someone that maybe their milk coming in was delayed a little bit, what can they do? Obviously keeping in contact with their lactation consultant, meeting with them, but what can they do if, if they really want to breastfeed? Because I've heard a lot of stories where if their milk doesn't come in, they're given formula right away. So is that pretty typical? What do you recommend then for someone that, they really want to breastfeed? What are their other options to kind of make sure they kind of keep going this path?
Yeah, great question. So we want to definitely take a look at the baby. If the baby is still doing well, despite the mature milk not being in yet, like the colostrum is sustaining them, they seem satisfied after they're done eating, they're not losing too much weight, then we can have a little bit more flexibility to wait and see what happens while we work on bringing in that supply. So formula supplementation is not necessarily needed in all cases when this happens. It just depends on how the baby is doing. And then as far as what parents can do to help their milk come in, skin to skin is always a great option that can definitely help. Pumping after every feeding, you probably won't get anything because the pump's not good at pulling out colostrum, but it will stimulate your breast more and kind of trick your body almost into thinking that you're now breastfeeding 2 babies. So your body will be like, oh, we really need to get this milk production ramped up and going. And then there are other things that you can do, but it would really depend on the cause. Like if your milk's delayed because you have a lot of IV fluids, then drinking lots of water and moving around, trying to get those fluids flushed out can help, as an example.
Oh, great. And so I know the big topic we want to talk about is breastfeeding misconceptions. Because like we said, like there's so many things on the internet. It's so hard to see like what's true versus like what someone's experience is or what, you should do. So what are some main like breastfeeding misconceptions that you tend to see out there?
I would say the most common one that I see, and the one that is like my biggest pet peeve, is that it's supposed to hurt.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's not. It's common for it to hurt, but that doesn't mean that it's normal for it to hurt. Can you imagine how we would have survived as a species if it was supposed to hurt to feed our young?
Right.
We wouldn't have gotten very far.
Mm-hmm.
So some tenderness in the beginning is normal, but pinching, cracked nipples, curling your toes every time you put a baby on, that is not normal. Breastfeeding is not a hazing event that you have to go through to prove that you're like a real mom or anything. Mm-hmm. So if you're having pain when you're feeding your baby, just get help right away.
Okay. And because I've seen like a little bit of discomfort can happen, pain, but when it's to the point where you're like it's like really painful, you dread doing it, that's when people should kind of interfere, I'm guessing.
Yes. Yep.
Yeah. And then what about like engorgement? Because I've seen some people say like, oh, that's normal because it means you have oversupply. But then I was also seeing that is a big misconception as well.
I think some fullness and engorgement is very normal. When Mother Nature brings in your milk, she wants to protect the baby. So she brings in like all the milk, right? And then after a few days, your body kind of figures out, oh, we don't quite need this much, and it downregulates a little bit. There are things that can make engorgement worse. For example, back to the IV fluids, if you have a lot of fluids in your body from the birth, that fluid is going to go into your breasts. If you have like breast implants, that can make engorgement worse. If you're not feeding your baby frequently enough, then that can make the engorgement worse. So when it comes to engorgement, what I usually recommend is feed the baby very frequently at the breast. If your breasts are full but not rock hard, like your nose, there's a little give to your nose. Heat is great, like take a warm shower, hand express in the shower. But if you're so engorged that your breasts feel hard as rock, like your forehead, you want to switch to ice. And it will go away after a few days. And if it doesn't, reach out for help.
Okay. What are some other kind of common misconceptions people might see out there?
I would say to be careful when reading about like supplements to take to increase milk production. That's a big one that I see in the mom groups, because just because something is safe for one person to take, and just because it's viewed as something natural, like an herb, doesn't mean it's safe for you. So one example is fenugreek. Fenugreek is probably the most common recommended herbs to increase supply. It's in like the mother's milk tea and all those products. If you have hypothyroidism, if you have blood sugar issues and you start taking fenugreek, you're going to mess up your thyroid and get yourself in a lot of trouble. So before you take anything to increase supply, I would connect with an IBCLC to make sure that whatever you're wanting to take is safe for you, and also because they can have some good ideas for increasing your supply too. The other misconception that I hear all the time is if baby's gaining well, then things are going well. And I hear this a lot, like families are telling me that this is what pediatricians are saying. There's so many families that are just struggling with feeding, and they're making it work in a way that the baby's continuing to gain well. So the pediatricians are often like, well, yes, he feeds, 24/7, but he's gaining weight, so everything's fine. And I see that with both breast and bottle feeding families. Like there are a lot of bottle feeding families I know that just, it takes them all day to feed the baby. They're all miserable. They're working so hard to get food into their baby. And it's a struggle, but because the baby is gaining weight, their concerns are often dismissed by the provider. So what I usually say to parents is, even if someone is telling you that it's going well, especially it's just because the baby is getting well, if you feel like it's not going well, that's your intuition kicking in, and you should listen to your intuition because you're probably right. So even if you're being told that nothing's wrong, but you feel like, I just feel like something's not right, it's worth reaching out for help.
Because yeah, I've seen that a lot too, where it's like you pay attention to weight gain, diapers. So what could be, the issue if, they are gaining the weight as they should, but, maybe they are feeding like too often. So maybe are they not getting enough at each feeding, or what could be the issue in those circumstances?
It just depends. Sometimes babies like are really inefficient feeder for whatever reason. Maybe they have a tongue tie, maybe they don't have a lot of muscle tone in their cheeks. And so they're able to get the food that they need, but they have to feed, every hour and a half for an hour to do it. So that's all you're doing all day is you're just sitting on the couch and putting your baby on the breast. And technically it's working because the baby's getting what they need, but it's not really sustainable for most families. Or for an example is like in a bottle feeding situation, there's a few families I've worked with where the baby has really bad reflux and has swallowing difficulties. And so they hate the bottle and they just scream through the whole feeding. So it literally takes the parents like an hour of their baby screaming while they're trying to basically force feed them. And then they're told, well, she's gaining weight, so you're doing a great job.
Gotcha. And what about like latching versus the positioning? Like a lot of times, I shouldn't say they because there's who's they, but I've seen like misconceptions or things out there that say the latch is more important than positioning. What's your kind of take on this, and what do you tell your clients?
I think both latch and positioning is important. I think the parent's position is important as well. I see many, many parents who hunch over the baby, and maybe the baby's latched and positioned well, but they're not positioned well. So they get neck aches and they get back aches, or they get carpal tunnel from the way that they're holding their baby. I personally think that latch and tongue movement, the way the baby is moving their tongue, is what's most important for both breast and bottle. Because you could have kind of like not a great latch, but it doesn't hurt and everything else looks good and the baby's gaining well and feeding well. Well, I'm not going to be too worried that their latch is a little narrow, right? So it's about looking at the whole picture. Is the parent comfortable? Is the baby positioned in a way where they can achieve a good latch? And are they moving their tongue properly? Are they being efficient at the breast? And there are all these like prescribed positions that you're taught in the breastfeeding class or you're taught in the hospital. And some of them may not work for you and others may work really well. And you just may kind of come up with your own kind of wonky position that anyone else who is watching you feed your baby might be like, what are you doing? But it works for you and it works for your baby.
Any other kind of misconceptions or like pet peeves you have when it comes to seeing breastfeed kind of like talk online?
I think there's a lot of talk about all these rules that you have to follow when you're a breastfeeding parent. And some rules, yes, some rules are just set in stone, like milk supply is based on supply and demand, right? And things like that. But if you're looking at rules like you should never offer a pacifier before 4 weeks, or you should never offer a bottle before 6 weeks, every family is so unique and different. And having those general guidelines in place can be helpful. Sometimes you need to give a bottle before 4 weeks. Sometimes you need to give a baby a pacifier. And no one should be feeling like they're doing something wrong or feeling guilty about breaking the rules. So yes, there's general guidelines, but at the end of the day, do what works for you and do what works for your baby.
I love that. I feel like we constantly just say that like in our own Facebook group, because people will ask a question and everyone shares, which is amazing. I love the community, but they'll share like their own personal experience. So then that person thinks, oh, I have to do exactly that. Or that's where the kind of like fighting or judgment happens, because people think like, well, I do this and it works for me, so everyone should be doing that. But it's so important to kind of see like, well, how does that apply to your life? Does it actually fit into your lifestyle? Will it work for you? It's important to ask those questions, right? For sure.
Right. And we all need to stop playing the comparison game. It's so hard. And if you figure out how to do that, let me know, because I still do it. But it's really, postpartum period it's already so hard to begin with. And when you are like struggling with milk supply and you're scrolling through Instagram and you're seeing someone post their freezer stash, which is like 6 months, that doesn't do anything for yourself or your mental health. So don't compare your journey to anyone else's journey. It's different for you. You're on your own journey. And if you have to take a break from social media so that you can cut back on the comparison game a little bit, then that might be a good idea.
What do you think every mom should know about breastfeeding? Like, let's say they're pregnant right now and they're interested in breastfeeding, like that's kind of their goal. What do you wish all moms would be aware of or know about it?
It's not as easy as people think it is. I think everyone, and this is kind of like the message that we get from society, but everyone kind of thinks because it's natural that it's easy and that the baby just pops out and jumps right on. And that does happen a lot for a lot of families, but not so much. You know, a lot of our families struggle in the US. So go in having a plan. Education is key. So taking a breastfeeding class is very helpful. More, you know, most families will take a childbirth class, but I think only 16% take a breastfeeding class. And if you don't want to take a class, that's fine too, but at least read a book, you know, try to get like the basic understanding of what you want to look for. And then if it doesn't end up working out the way you pictured it to work out, for example, if you have low milk supply and we can't bring it up no matter what we do, we live in such an all in or all out culture.
Mm.
It doesn't have to be that way. It doesn't have to be one or the other. If you want to combo feed, you can. If you want to switch to exclusive formula, you can. If, you know, there's a way that we can set up breastfeeding to make it work for you, even if you don't have a full milk supply or your baby is having trouble latching. Combo feeding is an option. It doesn't have to be all in or all out.
Amazing. Yeah, I think that's a great note for moms to hear, because I think they get expectations in their sites. And then you said back to that comparison game where, oh, my neighbor was able to do all this. And they see if they don't do quite as much, that they're a failure. And that's totally not the case. Every journey is different. I think that's such an important thing to say. And we also kind of wanted to touch on the formula shortage a little bit. So what is the current state of the formula shortage?
So currently they did allow, the FDA is now allowing imported formulas to be approved for use in the US. Lots of parents have been buying imported formula since before the shortage, but there are risks to buying imported formula that way because you're usually buying it from like a middleman. So if there's a recall on that formula, you probably won't get notified and it can be kind of pricey. So the fact that the FDA is allowing these formulas to be imported so that families can buy them here instead of ordering themselves online overseas is going to save people a lot of money and make a lot more formula available. Mm. So I would definitely look into that. If you're having trouble finding formula for your baby, definitely talk to your pediatrician and see what they have to say. If there's an alternative out there, is a good idea too. But, you know, they just closed that Abbott plant down a second time. I don't know if it's reopened yet, but there was a flooding in that plant. So just when they had started production back up, they had to shut it down again. And I don't know the exact current state of that right now, if they're open again or not, but I think it's improving, but it's still ongoing and it's not over yet.
Yeah. Yeah. I've been seeing a lot of moms posting in our Facebook group about that. We were trying to like help do like a switch thing or people had extra, and that only went so far. There were so many people still like had special kinds to get. So hopefully there can be some changes to that very, very soon.
Yeah. And if you're having trouble, check out the Free Formula Exchange. It's a directory. It was created by a mom in my state, Massachusetts. And you can go there and you just put up either what formula you're looking for or what formula you have to give away. And it connects you with parents all over the country. So some of your families might have better luck there because it's a nationwide directory versus just like a small Facebook group kind of situation. Okay. And it's totally free to use. So again, it's called freeformula.exchange is the website. So it'd be definitely somewhere I'd point families to. Another good resource is the Formula Mom on Instagram. She is doing a lot of coverage on the formula shortage, what options are out there. She's going over every imported formula that's being approved. She is kind of critiquing and getting all the information out about that formula so parents can make more knowledgeable decisions about which formula to choose.
Awesome. I will put all those links in the show notes so people can check it out, because I think the more resources, the better for sure.
Yeah. And speaking of like pet peeves, to tell people to just relactate is not the solution to the formula shortage. And I say that loud and clear as a lactation consultant. People who are just telling these moms to relactate have no understanding of how breastfeeding works. And usually there's a reason why that family chose not to breastfeed or couldn't breastfeed, and telling them to put in the work and effort to try to bring their milk back is not doing anyone's favors, and it's just kind of disrespectful and insulting. And relactation is possible for some families. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of work. It's a lot of time. It's a lot of energy. And often you are not getting back to a full milk supply. So it's a solution in some cases, but for most families, probably not. So to see people just say that to moms is just so dismissive and invalidating of their concerns and their struggles right now.
Exactly. And I
Yeah.
can't even imagine like the stress, to already like wonder if they're going to get formula and to put their body through, all that right now. It's just, that's definitely a lot. Yeah, I know. I've been seeing that too. And it's just, yeah, you kind of have to just, it's annoying to kind of see, because you can tell like it's people that don't really fully understand, or it's that kind of judgment that comes with it. Yeah, that's kind of stressful. So in general, where can moms go to get support? What are your kind of favorite resources as a lactation consultant, just in general for breastfeeding questions, breastfeeding support, and so on?
So if they're having trouble breastfeeding, I would definitely recommend reaching out to an IBCLC. If you're still pregnant, it's always helpful, if you plan on breastfeeding, to have a prenatal consult with an IBCLC. It's kind of like a private breastfeeding class in a way, but it's more in depth. Like if I do a prenatal consult with someone, I'm taking their full health history. I am seeing if they have any medical conditions that might impact their ability to make milk, for example. And if I'm seeing these risk factors for them, then we're talking about it before the baby arrives. We're talking about things that we can do to anticipate a possible low milk supply situation. There's also things that I can do prenatally during the pregnancy with someone to help them increase their chances of making a full milk supply that is more effective than if they come to me after with an already low milk supply. So in an ideal world, your OBGYN would be screening you for any risk factors for low milk supply. They tend not to. So that's why it's important to connect with an IBCLC. And almost all of us do prenatal consults. I offer a package that includes like one prenatal consult, one postpartum consult, where you get, I think it's like $75 off if you buy the package. So there are options out there. I have a milk supply screening tool that you can download for free on my Instagram bio, and that just goes over you, like you fill it out, and if you have any risk factors for low milk supply, it will tell you and give you next steps to do. So that's always a good resource. Be careful with social media. Facebook is a tricky place to get accurate breastfeeding information, as we were talking about. So proceed with caution when it comes to that. Same thing with all other forms of social media like Instagram, things like that. And be aware that whatever is being put out on social media by professionals like myself, for example, is generalized information and may not be the best choice for you. So if you're trying whatever you're seeing someone put out on social media and it's not working, then again, reaching out for help. I really like, if you're looking at like books to prepare for breastfeeding, if you don't want to take a class, Breastfeeding Made Simple, 7 Laws of Breastfeeding. It's a very quick read and a very easy read, and it will just get you the basics. And another thing I think parents should be aware of is I wouldn't necessarily go in relying on lactation support in the hospital to get you through your struggles. Lactation consultants in the hospitals, they have to see 18 dyads in 6 hours. So typically and this is just based on my experience in the hospital, I'm sure there are other providers who had a different experience, but generally in my area, it's the same way in most of the hospitals. We don't have enough time to spend an hour or two in your room to help you with a full feeding, versus when I see people private practice, they're with me for a good 2 hours and I see the whole feeding. When I work a hospital shift, sometimes I'm just running in, throwing the baby on the breast, and then I have to leave to go to someone else. So if you go in thinking, I don't need to take a breastfeeding class, I don't need to learn about breastfeeding because they're going to help me at the hospital, you might end up disappointed. Some hospitals don't have lactation support on the weekends or holidays or in the evenings. So it's not something that you can rely on.
Oh, that's really good to know. So being proactive in your breastfeeding journey even while you're pregnant, kind of looking into those books, classes, seeing if you can meet with a lactation consultant. And then understanding that you'll probably want or need an additional like private practice kind of meetup, so you can have more in depth and ask more questions, probably more comfort, probably, asking instead of, the rush around basically.
Right. And you might not have issues, and that's great. I had a prenatal client give birth a couple weeks ago, and she messaged me and she's like, I know had talked about setting up a postpartum consult, but I feel like things are going great and things are doing well. And I appreciate all the information you gave me. So, but if she was having trouble, she already had the name and the number of someone who she already knew, who already knew her health history, who already knew what her goals were, and had already connected with when you're, not in the crying, upset postpartum stage where you can't really think and you're sleep deprived, getting that information and creating that relationship with someone who can help you before you hit that state is best.
Yeah. And you talk about, so with like learning the health history, you look for some factors that might affect low milk supply. What are like those kinds of factors?
Diabetes, gestational diabetes, any kind of thyroid disorders can impact milk supply. History of breast surgery, if you had a breast reduction or a breast augmentation, if you had like a spinal cord injury, sometimes it's the age of the parent. There's a number of things that generally are considered red flags. But generally, anything that involves hormones in the body can impact how breastfeeding goes, things like that.
Okay, great. And I always like to end these with a fun thinking question. So if you could have a billboard made today where you could share one tip with moms everywhere, what would you have it say?
Oh, that's a good one. I guess I would have it say, you are enough. Wherever you are in your journey, wherever, we're so hard on ourselves as parents, especially as women. When things don't go as we want them to go, we tend to blame ourselves, put the blame on ourselves. And I hear that all the time with my families I work with, like, I'm not doing it right, so my nipple is cracked and bleeding, or I'm not doing it right, so my milk supply is low. And 90% of the time, it has nothing to do with what they're doing. They're doing everything right. It's just things that we can't control or things that they didn't realize was going on. So be gentle with yourself and recognize that you're enough and that your baby is very lucky to have you as their parent.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like it can never be said enough because I agree. Like we're definitely the hardest on ourselves. So that's awesome. And of course, where can everyone follow you, find more information, and get all your resources?
Sure. So if you want to listen to my podcast, it's called the Baby Pro Podcast, and you can find it wherever you listen to your pods. You can find me on Instagram at Shelly Taft IBCLC. I'm posting every day. I do Q&As in my stories like twice a week. I'm usually in my stories every day. And my website is shellytaftibclc.com. There you can find information on getting breastfeeding support, bottle feeding support, sleep support, prenatal support. You can find information about the mom community, the Baby Pro Bistro. But I would say my website and Instagram is probably the best place to find me.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for coming on. This was great information. I mean, I just think it'll be so beneficial to so many new moms out there. So I really appreciate you coming on.
Of course. Thank you for having me.
All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Shelly Taft. I know I did. I learned a ton from her as someone that plans on breastfeeding. I think that was a great episode to start with. Okay, so we're going to jump into MomTales now. And this week we went a little bit different. Had you guys share some different stories from your child's 1-year-old birthday and share what you guys did, because we get so many questions like people needing inspiration, ideas. So I thought I would read some people's posts, but if you're not in the Facebook group, join it. There's a huge thread. People shared photos of cakes, themes, and so much more. And just remember, like, do what makes sense for you. Don't feel like you have to do a giant party just because it's on Pinterest or your friend did that. You can do what makes sense, again, for you and your family. Okay. So here's a few different ones. Had family friends, his godparents out to our new house a week after we moved. Had a barbecue, played games, took pictures, and ate cake. He also napped while everyone was there. And this person says we had a small get-together at our local frozen yogurt shop and brought cake. Where the Wild Things Are themed smash cake and cupcakes, cheap and easy, and everyone loved the frozen yogurt. And there's a really cute picture of a cake. We will be going on vacation. A vacation she would like, maybe seeing her favorite cartoon character, but just for the weekend. Rented out a local splash pad. It was $30 for 2 hours, and people could stay all day while we were renting the space with a table. It was good for tiny babies all the way up to 12 years old. I love these different ideas. This person says, my son's is today. We are doing a photo shoot. Awesome idea. Our theme was happy birthday with bumblebees. I made shirts for all of us. It said Mommy Bee, Daddy Bee, and Queen Bee for my daughter. Cute. All of them had Mickey Mouse theme because it's what they loved. They had different second birthdays though. Rented a shelter at a park and had a Winnie the Pooh themed birthday party. Kept it pretty low key because I'm still in university and we didn't want to splurge money wise, but I did a lot of DIY jungle decorations with the theme Wild One. And we took him to Splash Park in the morning and then afternoon. We got a cake from our local grocery store and had a dinner with family, including grandparents and some of his little cousins. This person says, I did a pretty big party, honestly, but I wanted to. For me, obviously, because she won't remember. I had 2 bounce houses, one for babies and one for big kids, and outside activities. Her birthday is in the summer. Our theme was Minnie Mouse. She had custom made dress and we had t-shirts made for me and Dad with her grandpa. Oh, she shared a picture with grandpa. Our daughter's birthday is next month and we are doing Little Miss Wonderful. Since it's right around deer hunting, we rented an activity room and have family and friends come. Okay, I'm going to read one more. There's a lot of really good ideas in here. So if you're not in the group, join the group. We did a small barbecue party for our little firecracker themed over 4th of July weekend. We loved it. She's obsessed with water. Oh, this one cried because the wind blew everything down. Oh no. Did a very small birthday party for the next inside with better results. This baby, I plan to do a home party with lots of food. She's a food girl. And last but not least, this girl says, did a birthday party at a park, rented the shelter and all the kids were able to play, ordered pizza, got some decorations from the dollar store. I love that. So hopefully you found some inspiration, but again, remember, do what makes sense for you and your family. Don't live up to Pinterest standards. Sometimes it's unachievable. Do what makes sense for you and something that makes you happy. All right, guys, that's all I have for this week. Thanks for joining me this week, and I will see you next week for another special episode of Mom Talks with Christa. Bye, guys. Hope you have a great week. Thank you so much for watching this episode. Before you go, make sure you like, subscribe, and ring that bell so you get notified of future episodes. We release new episodes every single Wednesday. See you next week.